Solidarity! 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 I want to welcome people to International Workers' Day in Grand Rapids. This is a day celebrated around the world. Most countries today are having rallies and protests and gatherings, big and small. So thank you everyone for coming out. We have a number of speakers today, so please practice social distancing, keep each other safe. I was able to get vaccinated about a month ago and completed that. So I'm happy that we're proceeding towards a safer country, a safer workplace. It's almost like it's a new day in America since the new year began. I would like to say that a lot of essential and retired workers have suffered during this COVID pandemic. And on top of it, we have an economic crisis that began more than a year ago. So we're going to have people speaking today about both of those issues, as well as what type of new society we're trying to create together as a labor movement, along with other movements for social justice. We're also going to memorialize a dear friend of ours today, Deirdre Cervenka, who passed away this winter. So we've invited her family, and they'll be up here with us. Today is significant because it's really the day that we commemorate the birth of the modern labor movement of trade unions coming together around the world. It might surprise you to know that one of our stagehand brothers shared an article this week. The first union in Detroit was in 1837. There weren't even really settlers in this part of Michigan when the first trade union was already formed amongst printers in Detroit. So trade unionism wasn't something that came from Europe to the United States. It's something that was created here by American workers and immigrant workers and Native and other people together in this country. And it has a long tradition, and it has a tradition of being violently suppressed, not just at Haymarket in Chicago, but throughout its history. And so we're here to remember martyrs. We're here to remember those who have died from COVID this past year. So the birth of the modern labor movement began in Chicago when they hung workers and newspaper writers, actually, people who were trying to formulate the direction for the unions. One of those workers was actually an ex-Confederate soldier who married Lucy Parsons, who herself was African and Mexican. And they moved to Chicago and became part of the labor movement together. And Lucy Parsons set a good example for the rest of her life for what struggle is and what we are trying to attain with a new and better society. I've celebrated May Day in Belgium, in Venezuela. I was there 2 years ago, and there were 2 million people in the streets. I was in a part of the march that there was 400,000 workers. The Socialist Cement Workers Union, the Tax Workers Union. It was incredible. Community groups, just all types of workers gathered for May Day there to hear speeches and to celebrate that their society is run by workers themselves. I also have been to Colombia about 25 years ago, where at the time, for 20 years, 3 trade union leaders had been murdered every week. That's before I got there. We did a campaign boycotting Coca-Cola where 10 trade unionists had been murdered by death squads connected to the companies and the government. And after that campaign in the US, we were able to get the killings down to 1 trade unionist a week. And it still continues at that rate. They have one of the lowest rates of unionization in the world. You won't read about this in the New York Times or the Chicago Tribune or the Grand Rapids Press. They're still killing 1 trade unionist every single week in the country of Colombia. When I went to their union halls, I was with 40 other Americans, many of them trade unionists. When people would introduce themselves and say where they were from, I had the pride to be able to say I'd come from Chicago. Every place we went, that would cause the trade unionists to come and talk to me about the Haymarket martyrs. It's incredible that their consciousness runs back to what we did in Chicago with the workers' movement and what Grand Rapids did with the 8-hour day struggle in this city. This city was really, really important to the 8-hour day struggle. So whether we're aware of it or not, I guess I'm telling you we are aware of it now. Workers in the rest of the world look to our movement and our struggle and take inspiration from it. The last point I want to make in introducing things is before the COVID pandemic, the labor movement was on the rise. Things were becoming more militant. There was more organizing. Many of you know about and read about the teachers' strikes. There was a wave of strikes that began, and those also found their home with the teachers union in Chicago, who started that wave about 7 or 8 years ago and just had another successful strike. The key to their victory is that it's not just about the members of their union. The key to their victory is that teachers are standing up for public education, against privatization, against corporations like Betsy DeVos's trying to privatize and ruin education in this country. The teachers' unions mostly did strikes in Republican states. The thing with the teacher strikes is that they won in states where Republicans are in power. And so the labor movement can make gains no matter which party is in power. And we have to continue to build that movement. I'm going to say that there was an offensive strike in Chicago that happened back in September, meaning negotiating for what the companies are going to take away. This was a 5,000-person strike by the Service Employees Union that I used to belong to and the Nurses Union at the University of Illinois in Chicago. And they put forward demands for essential workers. They said, if you're going to call us essential, now's your time to prove it. And they went on strike and they won everything and more that they were asking for. They deserve a round of applause. There's a strike at a refinery in Minneapolis right now. There's the Amazon workers who are organizing and coming back at it stronger than ever, even though they lost. There's lessons that were learned there, and we're going to come back as a labor movement and organize. There's also another strike in Alabama, right near Bessemer, by coal miners. The coal miners have always been on the leading edge of struggles in this country, and they're always the most militant. Whether it's private companies sent out to kill and shoot them, or whether it's the police, they've always stood up to the terror and fought back and won and organized more workers. I want to start now with our speakers. I'd like to welcome Jessica Westra, the president of the Stagehands IATSE Local 26. She'll be speaking on remembering the Triangle Shirt Fire workers and the health and safety issues we face today. Please welcome Jessica Westra.
Hello. As much as this is a celebration of how far we have come, I would like to take you back to 100 years ago to show you just how bad it was before the labor movement started to change this country. Picture it, New York City, 1911. A 10-story skyscraper. The top 3 floors occupied by the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory. Nearly 600 workers were jammed shoulder to shoulder in sweatshop conditions at faulty soap that frequently threw sparks. One day, a rag bin catches on fire. That's necessary. It's not like the rags weren't covered with oil to grease the machines. It's not like there isn't hanging fabric all over a shirtwaist factory. No, instead, we have people jammed together and a manager going, "Oh, it's okay, I got it," and pulling out a fire hose that had been rotted through and a valve that had been rusted shut. So what's the manager to do? Well, of course, what any upstanding citizen would do. He flees the building, taking with him the key to the door to the factory, because no one else needs to get out, just him. Bye, manager. These women, some as young as 14 years old, had to literally break down a steel door in an attempt to flee the building. There were 2 internal staircases, both of which were locked at the ground floor. So the few women that were able to get to the stairs to get down were either crushed, smothered, or burned to death. The very heroic elevator operator took 4 whole loads of women down. Keep in mind, the one functioning elevator only carried 11 people at a time. Out of nearly 600 workers, 11 people at a time could escape the one working elevator. Nearly everyone else tried to take to the windows or the fire escape. The fire escape lasted all of 10 minutes before it collapsed, dropping 30 people to their deaths on the sidewalk below. Women with hair on fire and clothes ablaze fell and jumped from the windows in the hopes that the fire department would rescue them with their nets. The nets, however, broke the minute anyone hit them because they had never been tested to actually catch anyone. We are talking about an 18-minute fire. 18 minutes. In that time, 49 workers burned to death or were suffocated. 36 people died trying to climb down the elevator shaft. 58 people died falling to their deaths, and 2 more died later from their injuries. 123 women and girls, 23 men. In less than 18 minutes. That is less than the time you have been here today. All because the managers and the owners did not bother to check to see if their fire escape could support people actually escaping a fire. Because they valued protecting their workplace from minor theft rather than the workers' ability to escape. They judged themselves as more important. So when the fire started on the 8th floor, the owners who were on the 10th, who had gotten a warning call from a bookkeeper on the 8th, promptly went up to the roof, laid down some boards, and crawled over to the next door and then left. We are talking about complete and callous disregard of workers. This so horrified all of the onlookers that it inspired massive changes to both fire safety rules, to door locking, to every type of reform you could think of to protect workers in New York City. One of the onlookers was Frances Perkins. If you don't know, Frances Perkins was one of the major architects of the New Deal. She was Roosevelt's Department of Labor secretary, making her the very first woman to ever be in the presidential line of succession. She was in the crowd that day and saw the bodies hit the ground. It so horrified her, she started a commission to investigate all of these factories. Nearly 200 factories in New York City had to stop work and rehab their factories because they had similar or worse conditions than the Triangle Shirtwaist factory had. Some of them had worse. The Triangle Shirtwaist factory already had inadequate exits, no fire suppression, and no way to warn people on other floors. The owners of the Triangle Shirtwaist factory were brought up on manslaughter charges. Did they suffer any type of punishment? Oh no, because their managers' wives and the owners' wives in very fine dresses, who suddenly had way more disposable income than ever before, bribes, gave very elegant speeches about how they cared about their workers and we're all a family. I mean, not enough that they actually gave the entire insurance settlement when the insurance paid out for the workers. Oh no. When the settlements came down, the owners of the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory gave each family $75 for their loved ones who lost their lives. $75. Do you know how much the insurance companies paid those owners? That would be $400. $325 profit for creating an environment that killed their own employees. In 1911, they made nearly 50 grand killing their own employees. Anyone that tries to tell you that the workers are all a family is trying to distract you from the fact that the owners are caring more about money than about people. We need to unite. We need to stand up and say, no, we want safe working conditions. Picnics are wonderful. We want workplace protections. It's lovely to see everyone here. I need everyone here to remember that Workers United can never be divided. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jess Westra, President of IATSE Local 26. I would like to invite everyone to sign in at our table so we can invite you back to future events and incorporate you into the labor movement. Our next speaker comes to us as the chair of the Kent-Ionia Central Labor Council, and his name is Ryan Letts, and we're very proud to have their endorsement today. Please welcome Ryan Letts. Thank you.
Thank you, brother. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome. Thanks for coming out today. A special thanks to IATSE Local 26 and ATU, Amalgamated Transit Union, Local 836, for spearheading this event and putting it on. Appreciate them inviting us and allowing us to be a part of it. As was stated, my name is Ryan Letts. I'm the chair of the Kent-Ionia Central Labor Council. The Labor Council is comprised of 26 different local unions, private and public sector. They represent thousands of members across West Michigan. They do good work every day for their members. But that work doesn't stop with their members. That work goes out and they care and do good work every day for working families as a whole. The Kent-Ionia Central Labor Council really wants to be a committed voice for working families across the communities where we live and we work. For me today, I'm looking at the Spirit of Solidarity Monument. That monument is special to me for one reason. It means a lot to this community. The 1911 furniture workers strike brought together immigrants of different ethnicity and religion for the first time in this city's history. They finally stood together to fight against their employers for better wages and better working conditions. It just so happens that my great-grandfather, Claude Taylor, was one of the instrumental labor leaders involved in that strike. Thank you. Although he didn't represent members at any of the factories, he did lead and was a leader of multiple different labor organizations, one of them being the Newspaper Guild at the time. For those that don't know this, that strike sent ripple effects throughout the community that were long-lasting, including the makeup of our city government today, arguably making it more representational for the individuals that live within the city limits. So very happy to have this as a background and as a site today in regards to this rally. May Day is really rich in history. It in fact goes all the way back to the Middle Ages. Of course, back then it was more about the fact that May 1st was the middle point in between the spring equinox and the summer solstice. You fast forward a few hundred years, and it has actually become synonymous with International Workers' Day. In 1984, the American Federation of Organized Trades and Labor Unions began a push to demand an 8-hour workday. That demand resulted in lots of activity across the entire country. On May 4th, 1886, a general strike in Chicago, most commonly referred to as the Haymarket Riot, ended up resulting in the murdering of at least 8 individuals. Unfortunately, that's all too similar of a tale that we hear related to workers standing up for their rights and demanding respect on the job. This day is to remember our struggles, the struggles of the brave individuals that came before us, and to kind of revitalize ourselves in that fight to push that needle forward. Currently, there are 107 countries across 5 continents that celebrate May Day. They celebrate International Workers' Day. They keep the fight alive, and they strengthen labor laws and workplace rights for all. There's a lot of work to do, but I wanted to kind of bring up a good point. Workers' Memorial Day was 3 days ago, Wednesday, April 28th. It's the 28th of every year on April. Certainly, that day is to honor workers who lost their lives on the job and to recommit to a mission to protect every worker that is out there in the workforce. It just so happens that this year marks the 50th anniversary of OSHA being formed, the Occupational Safety and Health Administration. Since 1971, since its formation, workplace deaths have decreased by almost 60% in the United States, which is amazing. Still a lot of work to do. There should never be one death on the job, but I did want to highlight at least some of the good that happens when workers unite, when their families get behind them, and we all push for the things that we deserve, which is respect and safe workplaces. We all are here because we're committed. I appreciate everyone's commitment when it comes to what they do every day for working families, for respect and justice on the job. And I just want to thank everybody for showing up. Hopefully you take something away from here and go spread good work out there in the communities that you live and love. Appreciate it.
Solidarity. Now our next speaker comes to us from ATU Local 836, the Bus Drivers Union. And they have had one of the most difficult contract fights a few years ago that this city has ever seen. And that was with the Rapid. And, you know, we don't always win. In fact, when we do win, we better celebrate it because it's a hard-won victory every time. I just want to say that the Rapids is composed of a lot of local mayors or their appointees. And these people smile in our faces, and they tell us how progressive they are and that they're on our side, but we know better. We know that the only thing they're going to respond to is strong, organized, militant labor unions. So with that, right on, I want to invite Rashard Jackson to express solidarity on International Workers' Day. Welcome, Richard.
Thank you to my cheerleaders. I wish you all good afternoon and solidarity. As stated, my name is Richard Jackson, and I am what I would consider a transplant. I'm originally from Queens, New York, but I've served the great city of Grand Rapids in Kent County for a number of years. So I think I've earned my place here. And I come from a very rich labor background where the saying and the ideology, if you will, has always been, it's in you, it's not on you. May Day is the true Labor Day. It's about advocating for worker rights, and that's what we do. Encourage workers to unite. There's in numbers. That's an unrefutably true statement. The bosses and corporations, they know this. That's why they fight so fiercely at any sign of organization. Just 3 years ago, as Tom spoke of earlier, my local fought a grueling 30-month battle so that transit workers would be treated fairly. The theme then was WTF. If you had seen me text that to you, you might assume that it meant something vulgar. For us, the message was powerful and simple, but differently. For us, it asked a question: where's the fairness? Recently, in Bessemer, Alabama, workers at Amazon, in the middle of a pandemic, imparted the need for a fight over safety, dignity, and respect. So we wrote a letter of solidarity and support. It was entitled WTF. Same energy, same urgency, but a slightly different meaning. This time it meant worth the fight. Because I remembered what it was like to be locked into a fight that in all likelihood was not winnable, but necessary nonetheless. That message needed to be heard. It needed to be felt. Just this past April, Amazon, the workers at Amazon, they lost the fight. But it was a loss with lessons. As we press toward the mark, what's important is that we leave the markings of our press, because no organizing effort is ever wasted. The bosses will never back down, neither should we. This is your labor movement, and whether you push it, pull it, or drag it, we have to make it go. It's worth the fight. Happy May Day and solidarity forever.
Thank you, Richard Jackson from ATU, Local 836. Let's do a little chant, Jay. My friend Jay taught me a chant that we're going to teach you all now. It's real simple. I say, who moves this city? And Jay says, we move this city. That's right. Ready? Who moves this city?
We move this city.
Who moves this city?
We move this city.
Who moves this city?
We move this city.
Who?
We.
All right. Worth the fight. I love that. I appreciate that. All right. So we're going to have some short greetings because, not every struggle around labor comes from unions. Sometimes workers organize themselves. A lot of the immigrant rights struggle has involved, May Day. They brought May Day back in 2006. It was kind of a holiday that Americans had forgotten about. But thank you to our immigrants organizations all across the U.S. We saw mega marches on May Day in 2006. Yet again, another movement that was born from the Mexican community in Chicago. They first marched on May 10th against the Sensenbrenner bill, which outlawed solidarity with undocumented immigrants. So if you were a priest of a church and you provided clothes and food to undocumented workers, the Sensenbrenner bill was going to make that a felony. If you were somebody who allowed someone to stay in a spare bedroom for a few months while they found employment and reconnected with friends and families in their new country, and they didn't have documents, you would have been committing a felony. So in 2006 on May Day, you saw the greatest mass movement arise up until that date in this country. Now, the Justice for George Floyd movement has put even greater numbers in the streets. So take heart, my friends and fellow activists and organizers. We are living in a time of greatness. We are living in a time where our power is showing itself, and our job is to increase and organize that power and raise it to higher levels. So I would next like to invite a few speakers from the left groups, the socialist groups in our lives, because often they are the heart and soul of what we do. So next I'm going to invite up Severin, who's going to speak on behalf of the Freedom Road Socialist Organization, Ben, who will speak on behalf of the Democratic Socialist of America, and Gerard, who will speak on behalf of the IWW. Come on up. Say your name.
Solidarity, that's right. All right, as Tom introduced, my name is Severin. I'm here with Freedom Road Socialist Organization, and we're here standing in solidarity with workers from all over the world. International Workers' Day. Our day, damn it. So, it's a dang shame that this is a pretty recent development given the U.S. history of May Day. But we're one of the only countries that doesn't heavily celebrate it. So, we're here to bring that fight back. We've had a tough year. I don't think I need to tell anyone that they've put the struggle of dealing with COVID on working class people. I've been working about 60 hours a week since the pandemic started. I'm sure a lot of you have been putting in time too. But, this is part of the fight we have to take, because I think we saw this year, though, we managed to kick Trump out. Millions poured into the street, and we got justice for George Floyd. And that wasn't happening just because people were sitting around not doing anything. It's because people got out in the streets and demanded change, and that's what we need to do. The monopoly capitalist class in this country wages war on working and oppressed people every day. And it's damn time we start fighting back. Yeah! Solidarity! Solidarity! All right, so I think let's take this May Day and think about what we want to do in the next year, because we're going to have to fight Joe Biden just as hard as we fought Trump. And police killings haven't stopped. We're going to have to fight that. Immigration is still being oppressed. So, take the fight to them. Solidarity! Solidarity!
Thank you to all the labor unions and those involved in organizing this effort, and thank you to all the martyrs who came before us and gave their lives to give us more labor rights. I'm Ben Tong. I'm here to represent the Grand Rapids chapter of the Democratic Socialists of America. As socialists, we strongly believe that labor powers our society, yet we live in a world where 1% of the world's population owns almost half of global wealth, and the bottom 50% owns only 1% of it. Why is it that so many parents in the richest country on the planet are working 2 to 3 jobs but can barely afford to keep food on their families' plates and a roof over their head? The answer lies in the nature of capitalism and the processes of production. The agents of capital prioritize one thing above all else, and that's profit. To maximize profit, the exploitation of labor is a necessity, and they know that the cost of labor is suppressed by increasing the desperation of the working class. An organized working class is a threat to the ruling class. It always has been their prerogative to divide us. Racism, sexism, nationalism, every ism They're all tools the ruling class utilizes to deter us from forming a class consciousness. And because today's International Workers' Day, we should take a moment to remember that our country and its allies are complicit in global poverty. We should be putting more weight on our class identity than our national identity. We must understand that behind every smartphone lies minerals mined by child labor in the developing world. The oil in our vehicle is cheap because America installs and supports brutal regimes in oil-rich nations every chance we get. We must make efforts to help the global proletariat fight for economic justice and rights. Our quality of life is in rapid decline, but we're still holding certain privileges by circumstance of birth that the vast majority of the planet is deprived of. That isn't to say that Americans have it easy, or that every American has it easy, or that we're at fault for the actions of the ruling class, but we should apply an international perspective to our own class struggle. Thank you.
Yeah. Happy May Day, everyone. It's a beautiful day. Little cold for my taste, but we'll take this weather, thank God. You ready to dance around a maypole today? Maybe not, but there's a labor monument here. There's several elements of this monument that I really love. The first one is the guy right here. He's shaking his fist over at the powers that be, right across the river. If you come here at night and the light is shining on the water because it's a fountain, it looks like there's flames rising against the walls. And also, one of our fellow workers, Frank Gerard, is memorialized on the plaque, and he has a tree commemorated to him too. He was one of our IWW. And let me introduce myself. I'm Gerard, and I'm with the Industrial Workers of the World. Thanks. We have a new group of Wobblies here that I'm really happy that we came out today. The Second Internationale of Socialists and Communists started May Day, International Workers' Day, because of the massacre at Haymarket in Chicago in 1886. And then 8 years later, the US and Canada decided to move our Labor Day to September. But it's time today, we gotta take our Labor Day back to May Day. And what's wrong with having one more holiday anyways, right? Yes, we can. Si se puede. Yeah. The Wobblies are also called IWW, is Industrial Workers of the World. It's an international labor movement, mostly in the US and Canada and in Europe. But it's a union for everybody, so remember this acronym, OBU. That means one big union. It might be a pipe dream. You think maybe we're smoking too much ganja. Oh, by the way, if anyone has any seeds or plants, I'm looking for some. Thanks. To achieve this dream, though, Wobblies support all unions except the police associations, and maybe not the UAW so much, but just kind of kidding about that. But the police associations are really unions. They're gangs of thugs. And we're here to abolish the police and their associations and destroy the capitalist system. Replace it with a worker-run economy, right? Wouldn't you like to fire your boss? That's one of our slogans, fire your boss. And that's all I have today, except Black Lives Matter, Stop Asian Hate, Solidarity Forever. On this monument here is a labor motto. It's called labor motto. It's an injury to one is an injury to all. And like you see on our signs, it has been attributed to the IWW, but we're willing to share it with everybody because that's what we want. So thanks, everyone.
Solidarity! 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 All right, thank you. The heart and soul right there. Our next speaker is a champion of labor, the only politician we all agreed to invite today, so that's pretty significant. A leader in the disability rights movement, and also for Asian American equality. This is a very violent society, and that violence emanates from the wealthy and the powerful, and they use the government to put repression on people and movements, but they also stoke the fire of these reactionary, backwards, conservative thinking people. And they take people who feel isolated and who feel disconnected from society, and they push out bad ideas towards them until they act on those ideas. And then they act surprised in the news the next day, too. We saw this with the killings of the Asian American women down in the South. We see it with the anti-China rhetoric. But we also have the ability to build movements of solidarity. Even if communities are not numerically big, the labor movement needs to come forward and stand up for those. This happened in the 80s with gay rights and groups like ACT UP, who at first were told, you're too radical. But eventually people realized, oh, these folks are in the unions, because they became bold and started speaking up for themselves. And it transformed the politics inside the union. And it took struggle to do this. And that's the people who are here today. We're going to have other challenges that come up, but we're going to stand up together and figure out how to have conversations, not always easy conversations, to advance the causes for not just workers, but everyone who feels oppression or faces laws that are keeping them down. So our next speaker is a big advocate for all equality, and again, a champion of labor. Please welcome Lily Chang Schulting.
Okay. Hello, thank you so much. Today, we are standing in an important time in the history of our nation and our state. Let me start with a fact that Bernie Sanders disclosed in The Guardian just a month ago. He said that for the last 40 plus years, if income inequality did not skyrocket, then the average worker would be earning $42,000 more in income each year. Can you imagine that? This massive income increase in wealth and income inequality can be linked to what else? The decline in union membership in America. In our home state of Michigan, when former Governor Rick Snyder, who we love, made Michigan a right-to-work state in 2013, there has been a weakening of union resources, union membership, and therefore worker rights. Amid this background, we must stand up. We stand up for human rights, worker rights, and unions. We must mobilize and support the Protecting the Right to Organize Act, which is also called the PRO Act, passing the PRO Act. In doing so, we are standing up against union busting and against the euphemism of the so-called Right to Work Act. The PRO Act has passed the U.S. House of Representatives in March of this year, but it has stalled in the U.S. Senate. The PRO Act, according to the AFL-CIO, is, quote, the most significant worker empowerment legislation since the Great Depression, unquote. It will end the Right to Work Act, and which weakens unions and resources. What gives unions more power helps all workers and working families and is worth the fight. We must therefore remind the U.S. senators who are opposing the PRO Act, and there are 3 Democratic senators, along with all of the Republican senators, that this is about economic fairness. It's about working families and worker rights. We must remind them that this is not partisan, but Lincoln himself, President Lincoln himself said that labor is prior to and independent of capital. Capital is only the fruit of labor and could never have existed if labor had not first existed. Labor is the superior of capital and deserves much higher consideration. So yeah, let's communicate to those U.S. senators who are so proud to claim that Lincoln is their Republican president, their famous Republican president, that he said labor is more important than capital and capitalism. Today, we stand. Let us remember to thank unions for giving us a middle class and for making America great relatively. Pick any of a number of reasons. The weekend, which allows us to be here, the 40-hour week, the 8-hour workday, the end of child labor, family and medical leave, vacations, lunch breaks, safe working conditions, and much more. As we continue to fight to ensure strong unions, let us remember that only strong unions will help ensure fair or higher wages, safe working conditions, job security, pensions, health insurance, and the ability to voice our concerns. Without strong unions, Americans are now more than ever underpaid and overworked, and half of all Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. Without strong unions, the massive increase in wealth and income inequality continues to grow. Moreover, this income inequality doesn't just affect income, it affects our health. Low-income Americans, for instance, now have a life expectancy that is 15 years lower than the wealthy. How insane is that? Thank you for being fellow advocates and change makers and joining the solidarity movement for the health and well-being of all Americans. And together we will create a better society. Thank you.
Let's hear it for Lily. Woo! She'll be running again in a year, 2 years? 1 year. So she's going to need some supporters and some door knockers. And I know people here have done a lot of work for her, and thank you for that. With the labor movement, we can make a lot of friends and push things forward. Our next speaker is from the most important movement to exist in this country for decades. The most important, to put an end to the oppression of Black people and Chicano people and other oppressed nationalities in this country. It's a real barrier to class consciousness that we're divided by racist and backwards ideas. And this movement has directly challenged that. And that's the Justice for George Floyd movement and the movement for community control of the police. Community control of the police is a way that we can change the whole system and have people who are elected deciding what's happening instead of big city politicians and mayors who are controlled by bankers and financiers. So we're looking for real fundamental reforms here. So I'd like to invite to speak next Dee Dee Shante, who's with Family Over Everything, the family and friends of Breonna Taylor in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Please welcome Dee Dee. It's our honor.
Thank you. Black lives? Black lives? Solidarity! I like that. My name is Dee Dee. I am the president and co-founder of Family Over Everything. If you ever spent some time in the summer downtown Grand Rapids, you saw us on the corner of Pearl and Monroe. We started there with only a 7-day commitment to protesting against police brutality. And similar to what everyone has spoke to today, that factor of solidarity, you'd be crazy to find yourself on the front lines, boots on the ground, fighting for one thing, and then notice something else and not get involved in that also. So yeah, thank you. So it's that one word, solidarity, that means so much to us. That led us from a 7-day commitment to protesting police brutality to spending probably, I think 312 was the total days at Pearl and Monroe last summer, over the summertime and over that course. And in that time, we saw our displaced community. We saw a need for reform with defunding GRPD and allocating those funds into the community. So basically, I guess what I'm here to say is continue to fight, continue to show up. My Alexa had to wake me up this morning to tell me what was going on today. Sorry. But when she woke me up, we woke up and we're here. And I just wanted to thank you all for however you're tied to Tom. Because of our partnerships, we've had these machines that destroy fascism. Because of solidarity and because of all of the efforts of you, we have had successful events, successful marches. And I just want to thank you all and just know that your movement, our movement, we are intricate parts of it together for a better, equitable society for us all. I love you. Black Lives Matter. Solidarity.
All power to the people. All power to the people. All power to the people. All right. Thank you for that, Dee Dee. I also need to thank Walter Schink, who created these machines that fight fascism and bring them out again and again. So let's hear a cheer for Walter. So this next part of our program is very personal for me. And I think many of you knew Deirdre Cervenka Collins. You may have known her as Weiss Olive on Facebook and in life. And we're inviting her family to come up. Her parents, Jim and Linda, siblings Casey, Angela, and Bridget. And there's a woman from West Cork in Ireland who's another historic figure many of you probably know. Her name was Mother Jones. And Mother Jones came from a part of Ireland that did a lot of land struggles and led in many ways the struggle for independence. And so she knew her family and her history. They were involved in that. But Mother Jones became really important in the struggles in the United States all across the country anywhere there were people, especially women in struggle, Mother Jones was there to help lead it. And there's a monument to her in central Illinois because she helped the coal miners a lot. But she had a very important slogan that she would use, and I think it fits who Deirdre was, and it fits today. And that slogan was, "Pray for the dead and fight like hell for the living." And that's what we do, and that's what we remember on International Workers' Day. So why is this personal? Well, I did know Deirdre, but the reason I know almost everybody else here, and I've just met Deirdre's parents today, and thank you for coming, is because of Deirdre. I met Deirdre, I'm not sure when or how, but probably because of an immigrant rights rally. I know we participated in May Day immigrant rights rallies again and again together. I also know the IWW with our friend Danny Jarman and Deirdre would invite me out to different events they were doing, and I think they secretly liked having me there because I would debate the others. I didn't always agree. And so you have the immigrant rights movement and May Day, and then Deirdre took it upon herself to organize workers without a union, telephone sales and ticket sales. And the thing that amazed me about Deirdre is she won. She won the union election at this small company when they were pulling all the stops out to try to defeat her. But you can't defeat someone like Deirdre. They're persistent, they're not gonna give up, and they're gonna have their way. And that's also how I felt when Deirdre asked me to do things. It was never, I don't know, no. I always ended up giving in and doing what Deirdre was asking. And so that's why I became a stagehand. I was thinking of applying at other jobs, but Deirdre and Danny kept saying, come on, you gotta come with us and work and make the union better and change the way things are done amongst stagehands. And in fact, it was Deirdre's inspiration that led me to get to know Deirdre's friends, who many of you are here. Some of us had to work today, actually. It's a rare weekend where we haven't worked for a whole year, but this weekend a lot of us are working. But that's why I know the leaders of this local union, Stan, Jess, Josh, Walter in the back, Matt McManus, who's now my best friend and wingman. I know you because of Deirdre, and it gives me great pride to say that, and I'll be eternally grateful. Deirdre's death caused us a lot of sadness, you know, but it's in the context of COVID and the messed up right-wing movement that Trump's created that has affected a lot of us. But rather than be sad about it, I want you to get angry about it. Because when you get angry, that's when you find the courage that people like Deirdre give us all to fight back, to stand up for trans rights and GLBTQA plus rights and liberation. Yeah, let's applaud that. Because it's not easy for people. It's not easy in our own homes, it's not easy in the workplace, and it's not easy in society. But I'm asking you to say with me, Deirdre, rest in power. Deirdre, rest in power. Deirdre, rest in power. We will carry on your struggle and your legacy. You will not be forgotten. And I'd like to thank Jim and Linda for giving us Deirdre and sharing her life with us. That's what's important. I'd like to invite you to have something to say now.
When Deirdre was born, I prayed to God, please just let me have an independent, strong-willed woman. Some prayers are answered. Who knew that over 40 years ago, doing a part-time gig would lead to such a family alliance with the Local 26 and the IWW? On behalf of my wife, Linda, myself, Casey, Bridget, Angela, and Eric, we want to thank everyone for all the support we've been given during this difficult time. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So we're going to do a presentation of flowers and a card that we all sign for the family to take home with them. Thank you.
Thank you. You've touched our hearts, and you'll always be with us. Thank you.
So again, pray for the dead and fight like hell for the living. Mother Jones. So we also invited today the group Cosecha, Movimiento Cosecha, por Derechos de Inmigración. That's the movement that fights for immigration rights in many cities across this country. We've seen that many immigrants, when Trump was elected, left and went back to their home countries, mostly to Mexico. We saw that some of the right-wing fascist types in our country have gone out and attacked people who they think are immigrants. They don't even know. They don't even care, actually. They're just here to try to punish other people who aren't like them because they identify so much with bankers and financiers and Wall Street people. They don't get that all wealth is produced by labor, by workers transforming raw materials. That's what creates all wealth. And by rights, all that wealth belongs to our class. And this is our day around the world to celebrate that we have the power and that the working class is the future of humanity. We will one day have the power in the whole world and all of society. I may not live to see that, and you may not live to see that, but that's the only way there is going to be a future in a society. And we won't have immigrants anymore because people will be able to live where they want and travel freely. The immigration system, is actually a way to keep labor wages low in this country. Capitalism cannot exist without unemployment. And you're starting to see news articles that say, whoops, Obama and Biden and then Trump deported too many people and forced people to go back to the homes where they grew up. And so now there's a labor shortage, even before the crisis has ended. The economic crisis has ended. These articles are starting to appear. The fact is that when we go back to having an economy that more of us work in, wages are probably going to be driven up just by the fact there's a labor shortage. They're already talking to us about it in the unions, so pay attention. But Cosecha today is in Washington, D.C., fighting for the rights of all immigrants, fighting for the rights of workers. They brought 2 buses from West Michigan to D.C. for the big rally there. And they told me that they have 300 buses from across the country. Other immigrant rights groups from Grand Rapids are traveling with them. And I'm asking you to pay attention to that struggle. We have to do away with ICE, no more ICE. We don't need ICE. We don't need, I'm for borders, but we don't need a border wall. I've helped many immigrants come to this country with or without papers. I helped them because they were fleeing death squads and repression. And I brought them right through O'Hare Airport. Yeah, I guess that makes me an outlaw, but it was the right thing to do. There's a Colombian trade unionist in Chicago who escaped the death squads. They captured him and he got away. I brought him here through O'Hare Airport. I brought his wife and child here. She graduated from University of Florida 4 years ago, I'm happy to say. He was being chased from city to city in Colombia. The death squads would put up posters of this man. So we said, well, let's get him out of there. And the AFL-CIO actually helped me do it on the sly. So this is how immigration works. We can bring people here safe, take care of them. They can take care of their families. But we don't need these big militarized border walls. You know, that's just another component of trying to dominate Mexico and its government and its society. So we're going to fight for immigrants and all workers in this country. Our next speaker comes to us because Allie Bates was unfortunately ill this morning. Allie is the president of Justice for Black Lives here in town, who have led many of the struggles. But our next speaker, Barb Howard, agreed to speak about the struggle for justice for George Floyd in the city. And so I'd like you to welcome Barb Howard. She represents the National Alliance Against Racist and Political Repression, which is a network of groups in 25 cities across the United States. Please welcome Barb.
Solidarity! All power to the people! So as he kind of took part of my speech away from me, I'm here representing the local chapter of the National Alliance Against Racist and Political Repression, which, as Tom said, is an organization that was born in Chicago, but now is represented in 25 cities all across the nation, including this one now. And the goal of that the main goal is to shift control of the police from the establishment to the people, so we can ensure that they do protect and serve all the people, not just the few at the top. So I'm here really to remind us to celebrate our current victory, achieving justice for George Floyd through the conviction of killer cop Derek Chauvin. Yeah. And I want to emphasize that it's a victory for us, because the victory was won through the nationwide mass movement that we all were witnessed and were part of last year, including militant actions to resist racism and political repression. And this includes actions that happened right here in our city. On May 30th, 2,000 people protested in March and surrounded the police department, demanding justice for George Floyd and all others who experience police brutality now, in the past, and in the future. And also, recently, the March 8th protest, which again was demanding justice for George Floyd, where 10 people, 10 local activists were unjustly arrested by the Grand Rapids Police Department, which tells us that our protests, our actions are working. They're worried. They need to make a spectacle of people because they don't want us to protest. They don't want us to express the need for justice and the need to take over control of the police department, so we can ensure that justice is available for all people. They don't like that. So that tells us that our movement is working. And I believe that our actions and all the other actions that took place over the past year demonstrated that we, the people, have the power to affect change. We should take pride in that verdict. Every one of those jurors had to have some knowledge of all the protests going on. We had an effect. we had an effect, especially the people in Minneapolis. And we have to embrace that. We have to embrace that power so that we can achieve lasting and true justice. Only through the power of the people can we end the system of exploitation and racist and political oppression in this nation. All power to the people! All power to the people! Solidarity!
Thank you, Barb Howard. That's excellent. So we have a surprise for all of you, which is that you're all going to learn to sing a song with us today and join the workers' chorus. And so did someone pass out the song sheet? All right. So we're not quite there yet, but I just want to get you, get ready and prepared. Our IATSE president, Jess Westra, just handed me a quote she asked me to read from A. Philip Randolph, and it's, "Equality is the heart and essence of democracy, freedom, justice, equality of opportunity in industry, in labor unions, schools, government, politics, and before the land." Before the law of the land. There must be no dual standards of justice, no dual rights, privileges, duties, or responsibilities, no dual forms of freedom. So that's a very nice quote. A. Philip Randolph. So our next speaker and final speaker before we all join the chorus is the business agent for Stagehands Local IATSE 26. He's going to speak about International Workers' Day and union struggles in West Michigan here and the concrete things that we're doing to try to advance. I know many of you aren't in unions, and when I was a kid, 33% of all workers were in unions. If you lived in the white ethnic suburbs I lived in, almost half or more of the dads were members of unions. Many of the moms were joining the workforce in the 60s and 70s, and they too belonged to unions. Both of my parents eventually were in unions. But over the years, especially after Reagan was elected, things began to decline and decline quickly. And we need to rebuild this labor movement. And we need new fighters. And we need to figure out how to break out of the encirclement we're in. Because we're surrounded on all sides. And if we keep doing the same things, it's not going to change it. And so we need to break out of this, and we need new spirit, new plans, new thinking, and combine it with the tried and true militant methods of the past. So we're not throwing out everything. We need to advance with the lessons of how we can gain and build a new movement of solidarity and a new movement in this country. And we need leaders. And so the next person I'm introducing is a leader amongst those leaders, a fighter for the entire working class. He knows what we're up against, and he knows the difficulties, but he also has the determination and the thinking power to help us overcome it. So I'd like you to welcome Josh Roskamp, one of the most important labor leaders in Michigan today. Thank you.
I'm not sure how I'm going to live up to all that. Solidarity! Solidarity! Good afternoon, everybody. As Tom Burke said, I'm Josh Roskamp, business agent for IATSE Local 26. The West Michigan Stagehands. Yeah, of course, I can't turn a page now. During this health crisis where 575 100,000 Americans and over 3 million people have died worldwide. We want to remember those workers and retirees who lost their lives on International Workers' Day. We stand in solidarity with workers around the world. All workers are essential. Workers are more essential than owners in a lot of ways. Solidarity! Solidarity! How many of you here have been afraid for your safety or discrimination on the job? I know for sure I have. That's the common thread that brings us here together today. I'm going to share a little about what our union with others in labor have fought and are fighting for. These days, the fight for $15 an hour minimum wage is real, and a fight many of us take up regularly. I hear a hurricane coming. They know I'm long-winded too, Tom. I hear about $15 an hour. Oh my gosh, inflation. A Big Mac is going to cost $15 at that rate. It's not worth it. If it's not worth it, don't buy it. And when it starts cutting into the boss's profit because he's not selling the quantity he's used to, then he'll take a little less profit to sell quantity and get his profits back up. Also, why should a burger flipper make $15 an hour? I'm more essential, and I only make $16 an hour. The question then shouldn't be, how come someone you think is below you shouldn't make so close to your wage, but how come you're letting someone above you exploit your labor? Solidarity! Solidarity! Inflation happens regardless of minimum wage. If anybody's noticed in the last 10 years, minimum wage hasn't moved at all. But I'm sure everybody's rates on everything else has gone up considerably. Well, this conversation is just another they use to divide us. For a year now in Michigan, IATSE stagehands with other unions, gig workers, and hotel and restaurant employees held rallies for unemployment at the state capitol. We demanded and won expanded and continued unemployment while we are out of work. Now we want 26 weeks restored by Michigan lawmakers, specifically the Republican legislators. We would also like to adjust the amounts they pay out of to a greater number. As many as you may know, the rate of unemployment, what they pay out hasn't increased in over 20 years. So add inflation and all of that, there's really no way to make a living or to live when you're looking for another job on unemployment. They'd rather you're begging from the streets than actually getting up in your own bed and going to find a job in the morning. As our work as stagehands won't return, like turning the water back on, it just starts flowing. We work in the entertainment industry. We work everything from operas, symphonies, concerts to movie productions, along with a large assortment of other events. The life of a stagehand is not nearly as glamorous as you would typically think. There are many people that I've run to in my life that's like, oh, you got the best job ever. No. What's happening backstage is usually a bunch of grumpy old men complaining about not being home with their children. The hours are long when there is work. Work is far from constant or secured, as the global pandemic has shown. Solidarity! Solidarity! Most of our membership has worked less than 10 days as a stagehand since March 13, 2020. We had to shift from working long hours bringing you your favorite entertainment to working long hours trying to protect our right to work safely and our right to still exist when the work came back. We stepped from backstage to downstage center for everyone to see and hear. We fought long and hard in the last year. Solidarity! Solidarity! to pass the CARES Act, which provided an extra $600 in unemployment benefits and strengthened insurance for a time being when our work had all but completely disappeared, like a piece of movie magic. Speaking of movie magic, we're working on bringing good union jobs back to Michigan as we push for a new movie tax credit for filming here in this state. We fought hard as a local and even harder as an industry decimated by a global pandemic. We have participated in rallies from Lansing, Michigan to Indianapolis, Indiana, and back to Granville, Michigan. We have had calls to action from phone banking politicians across the country to their front porch and demanding recognition and protection until our jobs return. We stand in solidarity with the Amazon workers at Amazon that are trying to organize. Solidarity! Solidarity! We did a car caravan driving to different Amazon sites to show that solidarity. We are a small union in comparison to many unions, but we are strong. We are a strong, proud union with a lot of fight in us. And we brought that fight to the front door of many politicians. We pushed for 600 and got 300. It was a small victory, but a victory nonetheless. It was easy for our industry to come to a dead stop. It's not going to come back fast as it went away. We have lost many in this pandemic from the industry. Most importantly to us at Local 26, Deirdre Cervenka Collins. They were a kind, giving soul fighting on the front lines for change from immigrant rights to LGBTQ rights. They opened my eyes to some of my own biases and forced me to learn to confront them head on. Many union members have been killed in their attempt to get job security and safety. That's what brings us together with the social justice groups, where we joined with social justice groups like Justice for Black Lives in the wake of George Floyd's death, and we joined the world in a call for police responsibility. We've joined the Asian Pacific Islander community in a call to stop the hate that has been directed at them since the pandemic started, due to some people calling it the China flu and other people just stereotyping. And, we've all seen and heard about the attacks that have happened, and it's horrible. And it doesn't make any sense to anybody with a half a brain. This is a society where so many issues are used to divide us from where we work to who we love and what we look like. I know what it looks like, me being a middle-aged straight white man talking about some of these social justice issues. I do represent them as a union, and we stand behind those that it hits every day. As labor, we encompass people from all walks of life. Labor is what makes the world go round. Solidarity! Solidarity! There are new efforts to secure our rights in labor. The PRO Act, which some people talked about earlier. The short of the PRO Act is it protects workers' rights to organize a union and make it illegal for union or employers to use all the underhanded tactics they do to beat a union in a union vote. It redefines who's actually an employee and gives those gig construction workers and tech workers new opportunities to organize. Employers around the world fight tooth and nail to hinder labor rights, to form a union and bargain together for safer work conditions, as seen in Bessemer, Alabama. Over this past year in the fight to organize Amazon, the PRO Act will face many battles before it becomes law. It's not a fix-all for labor, but it's a start. There is talk about fitting it in the infrastructure bill, where at least parts of it are likely to survive the scrutiny of both houses of Congress. We will continue to fight for our rights as humans and in labor. Solidarity! Many of the tactics used to suppress labor are used to suppress Black, Chicano, and other oppressed groups, to keep us divided. That's how the Haymarket martyrs tie us together. The fact that we have to have so many laws outlawing people's right to discriminate doesn't say a whole lot for our society. Another act working its way through Congress is the Equality Act. This law is meant to protect the LGBTQ community. It prohibits discrimination regardless on sexual orientation. I've heard people argue that people in LGBTQ community choose to be there. No, they choose to be themselves. No one chooses to be gay or heterosexual or white or Black. We are all born the way we are, and we need to learn to get past our differences and fight for the common good. One of the other fights we fight is the right for everyone to have reliable health care, regardless of social or economic status. Solidarity! Healthcare or lack of it has shown the differences in how entire communities are treated. By limiting access to affordable healthcare, we all deserve to be treated equally and with respect. Healthcare for all would be a step in the right direction. The Workers United will never be defeated. Solidarity! I need to take this time real quick to thank many people. First and foremost, my mic stand holder, Tom Burke, down here. Since I've known Tom, I don't even know what to say. He's brought something out in me, and I'm sure that he's brought something out in many of you other people, and I can't thank you enough, Tom. He's held this event together, moving in the right direction. Second, I'd like to thank Jess Westra over there. She presented flowers with me. She was the first speaker. She's our union president and the one keeping me moving in the right direction. Walter Schenck, back there, he's hiding. That's how he's rolling today. Our brother who makes all the noise possible with his sound gear and his well-rounded stage technician skills. Stan Saha, he's over there at the table in the gray shirt, who keeps our entire political action forum moving forward. Our political action forum is at the front door of so many justice issues, and I'd like to thank everyone who participates in it. I'd like to thank the ATU for co-sponsoring this with us, and the KCLC, the Central Labor Council, for endorsing us and supporting us as well. For all the others that joined us today to speak and attend, thank you so very much. Have a safe and lovely weekend. Solidarity! Solidarity!
Thank you, Josh. I also want to mention two of our committee members who couldn't be with us to do the program today, Lindsay Caterberg and Kay Milanowski. And I need a really special shout out for these next two people. They're standing right behind me. Liv Lashley and Cole Hutchinson, who have held these banners up for an hour and some change. So rock on. So next, we're going to have the chorus. So I hope you're all ready. Walter Schenk's going to lead us. And you have your song sheets ready?
Where's the beer? I need a beer.
You'll need more than a beer. Yeah, that's going to be you. Let's see that.
Check, check.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you all for coming out today. This is a very special day for us in Grand Rapids. Solidarity is building, and it's building gradually. But my God, I couldn't imagine this last year or the year before. So thank you very much for coming out. Now, first of all, I want to thank, we have a backup group here. We have Tommy Solidarity. He came in from the Northern Ramada room in Chicago. He couldn't bring his backup group, so I could use 2 or 3 people to stand with him and help do the chorus for us. In the meantime, my brothers and sisters in the IATSE in New York are in a lockout right now with the Metropolitan Opera. Right now, I stand in solidarity with these men and women who help elevate our trade. They have learned how to make a living doing labor, and they fight and they stand together. Today, I claim that if they need us, we'll be on the corner there to help support them. So thank you very much on that. Now, Tom, we're going to start you out singing Solidarity. Give your chant, and we're going to sing back forever 3 times.
Can you tell us what the song tune is?
Oh, how about you do that?
All right.
Because just to let you know, I'm going to do a little bit of the Bronx spitting on this and a little William Shatner. So it's not going to be quite a great song.
So the tune for this is from John Brown's Body, which is what the Union Civil War soldiers sung. And then after the war, it became the battle hymn of the Republic, which I'm sure we all learned in school. So I'm going to do a little chant, and then we're going to start singing. Is that right, Walter?
That is correct.
All right. Solidarity.
Forever.
Solidarity.
Forever.
I said solidarity.
For the union makes us strong. When the union's inspiration through the workers' blood shall run, there will be no power greater anywhere beneath the sun. Yet what force on earth is weaker than the feeble strength of one? But a union makes us strong. Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever.
Solidarity forever, for the union makes us strong.
It is we who plowed the prairies, built the cities where they dig, plowed the mines and built the workshop, endless miles of railroad laid. Now we stand outcast and starving mid the wonders that we've made, but a union makes us strong. Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever, for the union makes us strong. This is our last verse today. They have taken untold millions that they never toiled to earn, but without our brain and muscle, not a single wheel will turn. We can break their haughty power, gain our freedom when we learn. The union makes us strong. Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever. For the union makes us strong.
One more time.
Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever, for this union makes us strong. Now I left out the last verse. I want you guys to write a new last verse, share it with us, and next event maybe we'll sing that one. Take care, everybody.
Peace be with you. Safe drive home. Thank you to Gerb and Mello for helping us put on the production. Solidarity.
Banner did a hell of a job. No, not quite.
Well,